Welcome, brothers and sisters, to my daily video, where I talk to you about the things that I've done in my life, my experiences. Hopefully talking to you about these things will help you in your daily existence. Talking about the perceptual shifts that have helped shape me, things that have got me from the craziest of addictions to the place that I'm at now, which is a hell of a lot more peaceful than it used to be. If you knew me 10 plus years ago, yeah, I was a crazy dude. I'm very glad to be the person I am today, to be honest. Life is a lot more peaceful and easy. So without further ado, I wanted to talk to you guys about being a polymath. Now, some of you guys out there may be wondering, what on earth is a polymath? Well, polymath comes from the Greek words poly, which means many, and matia, which means subject. So polymatia combined makes polymath, which means many subjects. Okay, so many study, very learned, all these kinds of things. Greek is very contextual, so depending on the context, it can mean either a person who's a polymath or someone who's very well studied. Basically, in the modern terminology, it describes somebody who is interested in many things, who is well learned in many different things. Okay, so where does this come into my philosophy? Well, basically, my philosophy has been really shaped, especially in the last few years, by this way of thinking. In fact, without knowing it, it's always been my base way of thinking about life. Unfortunately, because of the way that society is structured, society really tries to funnel you in one direction only. Okay, so if you are sitting at school, everyone, whilst you're in school, is asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? So it's constantly asking us, what is the one thing that you want to dedicate the rest of your life to? And I don't know about a lot of you guys out there, but this is not the way that I felt when people were asking me that question. Even though, I felt confused because I had so many interests in various things that it ended up confusing me, because now I felt the pressure to pick one specific path that I was going to go down for the rest of my life. And when I was a kid, literally really young kid, I used to do crazy. I used to read all sorts of things. I was interested in diseases. I used to read medical reference books. I know it sounds a bit crazy for like a 5-6 year old to be doing that, but that's what I was doing when I was 5-6 years old. Reading about insects and dinosaurs and spiders and and forensics. That was what I was interested in. I used to watch forensic detectives when I was a kid. I don't know if that was the best idea for me, especially at that really formative age, to be watching about like murder investigations and all these things. But that's what I was like. That's what I was interested in. I had this broad range of things that really appealed to me, and it was, as I moved on in my school career, I found this pressure from everybody around me to really conform to that rule of specialization, where it's like, nope, you got to go and you got to pick one. Sorry, itchy nose. You got to pick one subject, okay, that you are going to pursue for the rest of it. That's going to be your career. And I think this is not only something that affects me. I think it may be affecting many of you that are watching this video out there. Okay, I know so many people feel this pressure to conform to the specialization. Meanwhile, they're interested in art, they're interested in maths, they're interested in engineering, they're interested in music and singing and a variety of different things, from the arts to the sciences and everything in between. So I would say, like, someone who's an amazing role model for me and anybody who's out there feeling a little bit confused about this really narrow view that the world has placed upon us about being a generalist, being specialist, okay, start looking at polymaths throughout the ages, I believe that the greatest geniuses of all time, if you really look back at them, they were all polymaths. They had so many different interests. For example, Leonardo da Vinci. I would say that Leonardo da Vinci was primarily an artist. However, all of his other interests compounded to make his art even better than it would have been had he not studied all of these other things around it. You know, for one, he was an incredible mathematician, and he understood geometry. He was a musician. He played the lute. Okay, he used to dissect human cadavers so that he could see exactly how the human body was constructed. And so, as a result, for example, of that intimate knowledge of the human body through the dissection of the cadavers, he was able to paint the human body in the most realistic of fashions. You know, if you look at the Mona Lisa today, it may not really strike you as being the most amazing painting, but apparently when it was first conceived, when it was first painted, it was so realistic that you could almost see the veins in her neck pulsating. That is the level of accuracy with which he was able to paint the human anatomy. So it's just unbelievable levels of genius that, you know, me and you cannot comprehend, because, you know, we just haven't dedicated our lives in exactly that manner. And he used to make his own paints as well. So he was able to create textures that just ordinary people these days, if they just buy their paints, would not be able to create. You know? So in the same way, you may have this sort of primary thing that you're good at. I would say, for example, my primary skill is the ability to talk. You know, I am a talker. That's what I do. And with that comes along this sort of skill in linguistics. But I also have a lot of other interests. For example, I love to play guitar. I love to write. Occasionally I write poetry. I'm learning how to rap. I'm learning how to rap. I sing. You know, so all these other interests can factor into that talking. You know, I'm interested in everything. I love the ideas of quantum physics. I delve deep into spirituality. I am very interested in the forensics and crime. And all these interests give me subjects with which I can, subjects to discuss with people, and things to talk about, really. And the many languages and all that I am learning by simply speaking to people and, you know, taking the time, I'm also able to then maybe eventually craft music in these languages, you know, sing songs in these languages and write poetry in those languages should I reach the levels that I'm aspiring to. You know, I definitely think, I know that I will achieve those levels. And in the same way, using something completely different, if you think of something like, you'd be like, okay, but how does something that has seemingly nothing to do with the other, how can those things complement one another? You know, so I'm just going to use a really arbitrary example here, but say a fighter, you know, like a fighter, say a boxer or a mixed martial artist, how could he benefit from music or dance? And when I look at something of that nature, it's like, okay, how can he benefit? Well, this is how he benefits. He benefits from the ability he benefits from learning timing. There are some different odd time signatures that you might get in like jazz music, and there's different timings of steps that you get in dance, you know, and these different timings can really help you craft combinations and patterns that are unorthodox, that seem like they don't make any sense on the surface, but if you put them in the right context, they could catch people off guard. Because you've got these tried and true combinations that people are often drilled, and then you hit them with something unexpected, something that they didn't see coming, and all of a sudden, if it's put in the right context, that is the kind of combination that's going to win the day. That's why it's so difficult to fight somebody like Duplessis in MMA, because he's very unorthodox. Like he seems wild and out there, but it's hard to predict because he's not doing the technically right thing, but he's got his own rhythm and it seems to work. So fighters who are trained very by the book will have a struggle trying to fight somebody like that. So that is just a small example of how we need to broaden our perspective and really look into the polymaths of history. People like Leonardo da Vinci, Renaissance men of those ages, most classical education, people educated in linguistics, people educated in things like rhetoric and grammar and what's another word? No, not dialect. But they were educated in your linguistics. They were taught the arts. They were taught sciences. They were taught geometry. They were taught arithmetic. Had a very broad range of things that they were taught. And the modern world has really tried to funnel us into these very specialist lanes, when I don't think that most human beings are made that way. I think that there are some human beings that are definitely specialists, but I would say that the large majority of human beings have all these varied interests. And if you don't really give a voice to these many interests, I think it can end up you end up silencing a part of yourself, you end up repressing a part of yourself, and then that causes problems in other areas of your life. So if you're out there and you're really confused about what your career path is, maybe you're young, or maybe you're older and you've always had this feeling that something's not right, I don't feel like I'm just this person, it's most likely because you're not. So find ways of really channeling that energy into the things that you love, into your other interests, into your hobbies. And you never know how that will also impact on the career that you have currently. The most interesting places and the most interesting discoveries are starting to be really discovered on where two subjects meet. Like biophysics or biochemistry, or like quantum biochemistry, biophysics, what can I, physiochemistry, I'm not sure what the other, these combination fields are, but that's where all those really interesting discoveries are being made. And with your interest in one area, you may be surprised what you might discover using the thinking from that area, how that can transfer into another subject of interest in a completely different space. Like biomathematics. I'm pretty sure there's something like that. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. If you're out there, I challenge you to simply give a voice to one of those interests that you may have kept silent for a long period of time in your life, and don't just exclude it because it doesn't make sense or it's not worthy or it's not fitting into the conventional way of looking at life and a conventional way of looking at careers and such. So go out there, guys. Give a voice to your hobbies. Give a voice to your interests. I love you very much. And love all those different parts of yourselves. I'll see you in the next video.